to his feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland went to the lane, lobbed to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including Bally Sports Ohio, without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. We are going through changes, baby. The Cleveland Cavaliers have a head coach in Kenny Atkinson, and we have a new first-round pick in Jaylon Tyson. But today, we have an old co-host. My co-host, Carter Rodriguez, is back on the podcast. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. I'm calling in from sunny California as we knock out Call of Duty Major 4 at the day job, but I had to sneak into a side office so I could talk to my old pal, Justin.
We just couldn't contain the takes. You know, it doesn't matter if you fly across the country, you're still here, you're still ready to give takes. Respect, man, because whenever I'm out of town, I'm not tech savvy. I'm not able to set this thing up. So I appreciate you making the time and making the effort. Big thanks to Danny Cunningham for coming on earlier to discuss the hire of Kenny Atkinson. But obviously, we haven't got your thoughts yet, Carter. What was your kind of reaction to the hiring of Kenny Atkinson?
I mean, as I mentioned, I was really into the idea of James Borrego. So there was a little bit of that, like, you know, it wasn't my number one guy, but I think Ryan Morton, our dear friend, put it best where he said, I'm a Borrego guy, but I'm comparing what a coach did with his team 4 years ago versus a guy and what he did with his team 6 years ago. like the info and the data isn't really quite there for me to really feel strongly one way or the other. I think what you'd feel good about is that the process, was a little drawn out. It wasn't an impulse hire. It didn't seem by any means, despite the fact that anytime you have a search with an org this big, you're going to have different folks, I'm sure, with different favorites. But like the reality is, I feel like we wanted a coach that checked a few boxes. Kenny checks those boxes, and I think we're going to see a very different Cavaliers offense this year, which is ultimately what really we needed to see.
Yeah, I think it's the strongest resume that was out there on the market in terms of job experience. Mentioned it with Danny, but I think the fact that, he had the head coach experience, he had those data points of what went wrong, what went well, and then going back to kind of that assistant role on a title team, right? And seeing that through the lens of someone that had previously been a head coach, I think that is so much more valuable than just going through that experience strictly as an assistant coach, because you know kind of what to look closer for when you're studying Steve Kerr and you're learning from him. Obviously, also coaching under Ty Lue since his time as a head coach as well. And what I like, I always, we look at what's happening, we look at the news, we look at the games and data points ahead of us, but I think we always try to take a little bit of a step back and look at some of the macro trends. And I'm already starting to see, some of that develop, which, Kenny Atkinson, you look at his offenses in the past, a lot of initiators, a lot of ball movement, not relying on any one person to dribble too much, lots of structure to it. And then you look at the Cavs pick of Jaylon Tyson at 20th overall, and it's a player that can do a lot of things, right? And in that draft process, that was one of the things that, I had said that I really value and something that I want to see the Cavs add, whether that be free agency, whether that's the trade market or in the draft. Guys that are capable of contributing in a variety of ways, playing a variety of positions. And Jaylon Tyson, that selection makes me very excited for those reasons.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't someone that I dove very deeply into on my first kind of, homework pass. It didn't feel like a guy who we were hearing was associated with the Cavs a lot. You were hearing a lot of Furphy, some Filipowski, some guys like that. And so he wasn't a guy I paid a lot of attention to until we had Maxwell Baumbach from No Ceilings on. And he kind of mentioned all the things that make him such an interesting prospect. And on our last podcast before we started fully into draft prep, I did ask you, does the team have too many specialists? And sometimes you ask a question that you kind of think deep down is the case. And, so adding a do everything kind of player whose biggest knock on him in college in terms of the review of his tape is that he tries to do a little too much. He has to do a little too much for his team. Kind of feels like a hand in glove fit.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. And it's kind of similar to Jalen Williams, who I remember when we had, a month basically after that series to look at, or I guess the play-in loss to look at, okay, what prospects are available to the Cavs, kind of really deep dive in that class. We kind of, that was the guy that we started leaning towards. We're like, just under 6'6", but he's strong. He's able to provide playmaking. He, was in a larger role and kind of excelled within that role. There's a lot of those same parallels with Jaylon Tyson. And for someone that went from a specialist role when he was playing at Texas Tech and played it at a very high level. Our buddy Bob Schmidt tweeted out these stats, but he was in the 97th percentile in cutting efficiency, 90th percentile in catch and shoot efficiency, 94th percentile in transition efficiency, and 88th at the rim. That was in kind of that, off-ball kind of role player role at Texas Tech. And then he goes to Cal and is basically asked to do everything. As Maxwell said to us, their season started to turn around when they really gave him the keys and let him spread his wings. And even though some of those efficiency numbers dropped, his overall efficiency was high. 47% from the floor, 36% from three. His assist percentage went from 9% to 23.6. So for those that don't know, assist percentage is percentage of teammates' field goals while you're on the court that you assist. And his turnover percentage dropped as that assist percentage went up over 14%. That to me is a really good indicator. And even though he's not going to have that high usage with the Cavs in all likelihood, having someone that excels within a role but has the juice and the capability to expand upon that and give you something else, I think is really, really important.
And just the fact that he's a guy where the team took off as he took on more responsibility. I think that really kind of goes to show that he isn't a guy who's just filling up empty numbers on a team that doesn't have enough on-ball juice. It's like, you want higher volume to correlate with higher team success. It can't just be higher individual numbers. I mean, that's kind of the crux of what you're always evaluating when you're looking at some of these lower end teams of like, okay, well, is that because you just got a lot of shots and the team stinks? So I think that is exactly the kind of, again, he kind of has a little Strusian in the sense that, he can be a role player, but when he does get that secondary playmaking opportunity, he seems to really be able to pop. And I saw in terms of watching some of the tape, he makes some high-level reads, Justin. This is not just a utilitarian connector passer, at least at the college level. Obviously higher degree of difficulty the higher up you get in the competitive, chart. But I saw him running some pick and rolls where, he's running pick and roll. He looks to the weak side corner to hit that corner three and draws the defender over, makes the defender at the baseline take that extra step towards the 3-point shooter and then hits a cutter for a wide open dunk. Those kind of misdirect manipulation plays are some of the hardest playmaking plays to make. And a lot of guys don't ever get there. So the fact that he's seeing those plays, and yeah, the turnover rate was high. He certainly got a little too big for his britches sometimes. But I go back to seeing the pass. It is so much more important than always making the pass when you're evaluating a prospect.
Yeah, you can always, pare that down. You can clean it up. That's something that, you can gain a better understanding of what you're able to pull off on film. And, the second half of the podcast with Danny, which is now lost for time, I want to, at least bring up some of the points I've made because I like being accountable to my takes, whether or not they're hidden or not. And one of the things I was saying kind of going into draft day was, I get worried. I got worried looking at the wings where I just felt like there were too many specialists. Like De Silva, the fact that, he's 23, 24 years old here and he's not really able to boss guys around physically. You look at Furphy, who 35% shooter, and if his shot isn't falling, he's not going to contribute. Like that's a really concerning thing to me. And I just felt a lot of the wings, even someone like Keontae George, Kaishawn George, sorry, who I in the podcast with Maxwell, I said this is someone that I'm kind of leaning towards. I had cooled on him already by the following week, just because the volume was so low in what he was doing, and there were just so many questions that I was starting to lean towards, hey, should we just get a stretch four? Like, should we just try to address that need and go find a wing or a playmaker somewhere else? And the fact that they didn't go stretch four, and you saw those guys that we were looking at, like Filipowski and Tyler Smith, fall to the second round, it shows you that a lot of teams kind of agreed that, you know, that's a little bit too high for them. And the fact that they said, you know what, we're going to take this guy that's, you know, 6'6", 220. He's able to contribute in a whole lot of different ways. To me, that's so much more important than taking someone that, you know, maybe has a little bit more height but has less to their game. To me, I think that is important. And I don't know about you, Carter. Where do you fall on the height thing? Because I did see that came up a fair bit in the conversation after the pick.
I would say tall enough. You know, I think there is probably a, hey, we got this wing we're interested in. He's 6'4". It's like, we kind of have a lot of that archetype. You know, I've been big positional size guy, and you know, Tyson certainly isn't going to be that. He's not going to flip the paradigm and make this team all of a sudden a huge team. But one thing that I think you give him a lot of credit for is this dude's nasty. He's physical and he's thick. You know, like, I think one of my gripes with the team being small is I think they're small and they're big, and they're got a lot of their players
they're
don't
lean.
play. A lot of them don't play as even at their height in terms of physicality on the roster. And so the fact that you have a guy who can dig out space and really play with a nastiness on his drives, where when he turns the corner, he's just shielding with his body so well, because he's just a bigger framed guy. I mean, what does he weigh? Like 20 pounds more than Karras is listed at, or something like that. Like,
yeah.
So, you know, I think the height is not crazy and the length is not crazy, but it's not bad. And like, I think the fact that he plays a physical style, because like when you hear me talking about positional size in the postseason, it's getting frustrated that our 6'4", 6'5" guys are getting dug out by 6'7", 6'8" guys, you know, at the baseline for offensive boards and things like that. Not worried about that with this guy, man. A voracious rebounder, tough as they come, and like, I think like that level of physicality takes, you know, what I would say average height for the position is, and makes it more than okay.
Yeah, and I think a great example of that is someone that, you know, I've seen Cavs fans pine for in the past, which has been Keldon Johnson. And you know, that's been a guy that we've had interest in too. He's smaller. Like, he's 6'5", like, you know, he's a half inch shorter than Jaylon Tyson, and they weigh the same amount. They're both 220, right? Like, these are big guys. You look at Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown measured without shoes the exact same height as Jaylon Tyson. Only Tyson, you know, is a little bit stronger. Brown has the, you know, advantage when it comes to wingspan. But I do think that,
and vertical pop. That man is an athlete.
Absolutely. But I think when you're talking, you know, just strictly size and whatnot, I feel confident that he's going to be able to, you know, play some three and be able to play at that position, because strength is such a big part of it, right? If you're able to get in front of guys and disrupt where they're going and they're not able to move you, that defense before the shot matters just as much, if not more. I would argue more than the defense on the shot and the contest, because especially in today's NBA, where you're not really allowed to get your hand in the face, and like, if you so much as graze them, it's going to be a shooting foul. What you do before the shot to disrupt the rhythm, to throw off the timing of the jump shot, I think is really important.
Or just not get knocked back, so they can rise up with you backpedaling.
Right. So you look at him compared to a guy like Keldon Johnson, who plays power forward, I'll remind people, at 6'5". It gives me a lot of confidence. And, you know, I am happy that when we had Maxwell on, that was one of the things I asked him, which was, hey, is he a big 2 or is he a 3? And, you know, Maxwell basically said, you know, with the strength that he has, that's a small forward, right? And I think the fact that he is the same height as the starting small forward on the world champion Boston Celtics should at least dispel some of that. But what I really do like, and I think we've talked about it already a little bit here, but I just want to continue to hammer this point. The fact that he is able to contribute in a lot of ways where, in a reduced kind of off-ball role, he is incredibly efficient and able to contribute, able to kind of provide playmaking, a good pick and roll ball handler, someone that gets out in transition, someone that sees the reads, that can play multiple positions and defend multiple positions. I think that's really, really important from a team building standpoint, because when you have guys that are specialists, or, there's just really the one position that they can play, all of a sudden they become dependent on other guys around you. And I think when you start adding guys that are multifaceted in terms of what they're able to bring to the table and the number of positions they're able to play, it allows you from a team building standpoint to pursue more options on the trade and free agency market, because all of a sudden you have that little bit of confidence of, oh, we can slide this guy over here. Like, even if Jaylon Tyson is just a high-level bench player for the Cavs moving forward, which, for a 20th pick would be a high-end outcome for this pick, even if that's his role, that flexibility from a team-building standpoint, I think, is really, really important.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right, both from coaching the team and from a team-building perspective. Like, something that came to the crux of my, kind of, do we have too many specialist questions is, so many guys, when they're on the floor, we have to figure out, okay, so they're on the floor, so what do we need to do to help kind of insulate them at this thing? Okay, we got both bigs on. We're going to need a lot of shooting. Okay, we got both guards on. We're going to need probably a point of attack defender and a really good rim protector on the floor. We have Niang on. We're going to need, better point of attack defense and at least one rim protector on the floor. You're just constantly kind of doing this, who are we going to help cover? And I think one of the reasons Karras has been such a high minutes player over the years is he's a guy who really hasn't necessitated a ton of those kind of, sacrifices or choices. You can kind of play him with a lot of these lineups. I feel like the same way for Tyson, because he can defend a little bit, he can shoot a little bit, he can guard, he can play make a little bit, he can do all these things a little bit, and so as a coach, you have a lot of lineups you can find him in, assuming he's good enough, which, by the way, is going to have to be the kind of perpetual disclaimer, because, again, you mentioned 20th overall pick. A lot of those guys aren't rotation players in good drafts, in very well-regarded drafts. So, he's going to have a lot to prove. But then also to your team-building point, if you do need to move off of a player, having not needing to replace a player one for one because you don't have that skill set anywhere else on the roster, guys like this can kind of bridge that gap a little bit and let you be a little different and not just need to go like for like on every kind of type of transaction you make, and just kind of start slowly but surely twisting and changing the shape of the roster construction. So I'm really excited about this pick, Justin. I was pleasantly surprised when the pick was made, and now I'm full on happy about it. I'm actually very excited about this guy as I've done more. I do think we should spend a little time talking about some of the limitations, some things that I'm curious about on the lower end outcome. The no ceiling.
You should take the lead with concerns, because just like Jaylon Tyson seems to understand what his role is going to be, I understand my role on the podcast, and I'm the one that's a little brighter lit, and I'm the sunny side guy. So let's go wet blanket Carter here.
Yeah, not quite wet blanket, because I do want to couch some of these concerns. But no ceilings on the draft guide. The top prospect that they compared him to was Denzel Valentine, who is a player who was a very, very successful college box score stuffer that was not a successful NBA player. And Cavs fans, saw Denzel Valentine do a shift here. The other comps they had for him were Gordon Hayward and John Salmons, who were much more successul.
I was about to say that middle one probably just warmed your heart, didn't it?
Yeah, that's quite the high-end outcome. Salmons kind of feels like the middle ground between the two, because John Salmons was a bucket. He was a player.
Boy, was he ever. I remember those Celtics Bulls series. Those were awesome.
Yeah, but if you are a Tyson skeptic, I think you could point to a couple things. You could point to the fact that not an explosive athlete. There were some finishes at the college level where he was kind of relying on little push hook shot type of shots over length, and like that 10% more athleticism, 10% more length at the NBA turns those from like efficient shot attempts to like no chance shot attempts pretty quick.
Yeah.
So
they might be going into the 15th row.
Yeah, so I think some of those shots are just going to not get to be part of his diet anymore, and that's going to meaningfully affect him at the rim. He's a little bit older. He's 21 and a half, so he is more physically developed than a lot of guys, but like that's where the Valentine comp does not play for me, Justin, because Valentine was 23 and was one of those guys who just got a little better every year through college and was like just beating up on 18-year-olds by the end.
Right. There wasn't the leap year like we've seen here with both Jaylon Tyson and, the comparison I made earlier in the podcast with Jalen Williams.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a very good comp for high-end outcomes for Tyson. So, I think like you worry a little bit about the finishing and athleticism. The on-ball defense took a big step back last year at Cal with the high volume, and sometimes you worry about that because like, hey, the NBA, even though your role is getting smaller, I think sometimes we're a little too quick to be like, but he won't have to dribble as much, so it'll be easier for him to be a great defender at the next level. Like, yeah. NBA defense is hard, so any evidence that says that you're not so good on ball, I think you have to call out and note.
I agree. Because there's no guarantee that a good college defender is going to be a good NBA defender, right? Like there is a learning curve there, so I think you're correct to point that out.
Absolutely. And then on the last one, the shot isn't pretty. Like it went in at a pretty high rate, I think, and he was a 37% catch and shoot 3-point shooter at college, but much like Denzel Valentine, who was a high percentage 3-point shooter in college, it's not the prettiest off his hand, at least in my opinion. And that's not a death sentence. That doesn't actually, it might not matter at all, frankly. But given that, it's one of those things where it's like, the aesthetics of the shot don't quite match the numbers for me, and maybe that matters, maybe it doesn't. I mean, we've had players that have gone the opposite way, where I've loved every shot coming off their hands, and they didn't make any of them. So I think that is the case.
We miss you, Dylan Windler.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is the case against Tyson, those three things. Did any of those jump out at you as like an exceptionally large concern, as like, oh, that's the one I'm actually worried about?
No, I wouldn't say anything's a large concern because I think I've learned to kind of temper my expectations with prospects coming into the NBA, even an older prospect, right? Like I think the Ochai Agbaji experience even was a little bit instructive, right? Where, okay, it's like, hey, he's a little limited with what he can do, but it's very polished. And then you see it in Summer League where he's hitting every shot and it's like, hey, like this is going to work out. And then, 2 years later, he's kind of tossed aside as an afterthought. Other guys in that draft, even like I thought AJ Griffin's going to be a knockdown shooter, and that hasn't proven to be the case, right? So I think I'm not as like sold on any strengths or weaknesses. I just think they're all important data points to point out. And one of the things that I certainly find encouraging is listening to someone national like Brian Windhorst, who went on ESPN Cleveland and was talking about how every scout he talked to said insanely hard worker, incredibly high IQ, like he's putting that work in all the time, someone that's going to work as hard as they can to maximize their ceiling. To me, that's encouraging. Did you see his interaction with Spencer Davies?
No, I did not.
Okay, so Spencer asked him about his close relationship with Al Harrington, because apparently that's been, someone that's been in his life for a long time, and he of course messed with Spencer, saying, "Who? Never heard of him," and just got Spencer to totally panic in that situation.
That's mean.
It was really mean. I really liked it, but just someone that has strong support structure, right, and is coming into an environment where that's definitely going to be the case. I think that's really, really important, and I think the other thing that matters is developmental reps early on, matching him with a team and a culture and a coach that matches his skill set. And when you look at those Brooklyn Nets teams and how they succeeded, it wasn't because, they had as Steve Nash that's creating good looks for everybody. It's let's have a variety of guys that can create, right? Like, oh, obviously D'Angelo Russell's going to do it, but we also got Karis LeVert that's doing a little bit here. We got Spencer Dinwiddie, we got Alan Crabb, we've got Rondé Hall. We got Rondé Hollis Jefferson, who we're going to give him some ball handling reps and just kind of like explore the space here, right? Like it was kind of throughout the lineup that, it's playmaking by committee, empowering everybody to have a role. And I think someone that's a jack of all trades is really, really a good fit for that. And you talked about how he can give you flexibility if you have to move off somebody in the future. I think the hope is that he gives you the flexibility that all of a sudden you feel like guys that, you don't have to move off, but you're kind of operating from a position of luxury of, we have, we've got someone that can fill this role, but Jaylen can also do that. Like he can also bring some of that to the table.
That's what the Denver Nuggets are doing with Christian Brown right this second.
Absolutely, right? Like it allows you to explore the opportunities that are out there and available to you. And I think that is so important given how punitive the CBA is. And just the more challenging that team building has become. I think being able to add someone like this at 20 is advantageous. And, going back to our draft preview podcast with Maxwell, the fact that he mentioned, like the top end of this draft isn't very good, but this post-lottery range is stronger than it was 2 years ago, right? Like I feel better about it. I feel better about some of these guys that have experience about their ability to come in and make an impact. And the fact that, Jaylon Tyson was near the top of his list as best possible fits for the Cavs, I certainly found that encouraging. And, out of his three, Tyson was the youngest and the one that I kind of feel most confident in physically being able to contribute, right? Like going back to the De Silva concerns, like it just like man was old and he was kind of getting.
That's what I'll say.
I think he's going to stick around. Like that's someone I think he's going to stick around in the league and have a role as kind of a spot up shooter and whatnot. I think he's going to do well. Congratulations to the Orlando Magic. They, a good young team that went out and added some veteran presence with the De Silva pick. But I just think that Tyson is just a little bit more versatile.
Yeah, I mean, I would have put those two prospects in different tiers, and I don't know what the Cavs' final big board was, but like in terms of like, if I'm looking at an older player, I want an older player that feels physical, that feels like they can do a lot, that they've developed a lot of their skills in a lot of different areas. And, I just think athletically Tyson is a wing, and I don't know if De Silva is. So it'll be really interesting to see, how far off I am on that. A lot of smart people are bigger fans of him than I was, but I just think that the board landed really, really well for this Cavs team. I think they could have, you look down the board and you see Furphy and Flip don't even go till the second round, which was a pretty precipitous fall based on everything we saw. Yep. So the fact that seems like the Cavs maybe didn't value them as highly. I think in terms of names that you might come see burn you later is a guy like Duran Holmes, who goes 22, who, yep. If you were on team stretch big, having him there, and what an awesome landing spot for him, by the way, to just get to, mentor under Jokic. But if he pops in a big way, maybe you have some of the aw shucks, Tyler Smith going to Milwaukee, which is an awesome spot for him. Yeah. That could be an aw shucks. But for the most part, I think all the guys that I really would have been highly interested in, run to the podium guys like Bob Carrington, guys like Dalton Connect, which, oh man, he almost got there.
Yeah.
Those guys.
It's just unfair that he went to the Lakers. I hate that.
Whatever. Those guys are gone. So I think they made a really, really good fit choice that I feel like in a draft like this that I was not as enamored with the talent in the range. I'm like, this guy has less warts than all the other people that I'm watching. And, I think has a very, very high chance to become a successful role player for them.
Yeah, and the trend that I'm seeing when you mention guys that you think might be able to pop off is, they landed in the right situation, right? Like the fact that Tyler Smith's in that spot with the Bucks. I think that's a really good spot for him. Holmes as well. That's a really nice spot where, the structure is going to be there. And I think that was a big part of why you saw Tyson show up in articles being like, hey, like, draft day steals or best value and stuff like that, because there's a belief that, hey, the Cavs are the right situation for him. Like, every prospect's a gamble, whether it's the lottery, whether it's outside the lottery, like, all the research in the world is only going to tell you so much, but it's about, is the structure there? Is it the right situation? Is it the right coach? Is the right support going to be in place? And, for us, we always have the right support thanks to Zoom. Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects. Carter, you know what's right around the corner?
Not your birthday, I don't think. What is it?
It is. Thanks for being a good friend. That wasn't what I was going for, though. Canada Day is right around the corner. We've got more Sea Bears games right around the corner. That's very exciting.
Rip to the Byron Mullins era, by the way.
Good Lord, man. We cut the reigning MVP, Teddy Allen, and we've gone undefeated since. Cut Byron Mullins, just a real culture of accountability going on up here in Winnipeg, man.
Brother.
The team over names. But of course it's none of that stuff, buddy. It's Summer League. The Cavs have to defend their Summer League title. We got a little bit of information from Mike Ganzi about who is going to be available at Summer League. And of course, I think the name that most Cavs fans were interested in was getting Luke Travers back on the team and getting yet another look at him, because when you're talking about the Cavs adding guys that are able to contribute in a lot of ways, I think people have gotten excited in the past, us included, about Luke Travers' ability to, get blocks, get steals, get assists, the vision that he has, being able to play at, 6'7", 6'8", whatever he is. And then, play even bigger than his size. And I'm definitely really interested to see what he can bring to the table, because when you make some of these second round picks, man, like it might not pay dividend until 2-3 years down the road. And now, this is going to be the third Summer League with them. I'm going to be interested to see if, hey, is there some meat on the bone here?
Yeah, it feels like a big summer for Travers, who I think both of us are pretty big fans of. And, frankly, I really want to see him on this Cavaliers roster next year, even if it's on a two-way deal. I just think it is but with all that said, I think this is the Summer League where Travers shows, like, hey, I'm an NBA prospect or I'm not. Right. I mean, he's 22 now. He's not a kid anymore. He has 3-4 years of pro play under his belt. And like, he's got great size. He's got great instincts, solid athleticism. It's that jumper. It's that physicality. And like, I've watched that guy for 2 straight summer leagues and been so dang impressed by his contributions to winning plays. And I just kind of feels like a if not now win time for him. And as someone who is pretty invested in him and is a big fan of what he's brought to the table, and by the way, just keeps winning even in Australia. I gotta think this is the year. It kind of feels like a make or break year. That's not sourced or informed by anything. It just kind of feels like that. How many summer leagues can you really get to?
Please aggregate, Carter. Please get him in trouble. We want that here. Make or break year for Luke Travers. Clutch points. Eat your heart out. It's going to be interesting, because I think when you look at it now, as the roster currently stands, we do have 12 roster spots spoken for, or at least with contracts next year. That's Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, Allen, Strus, Karras, Niang, Wade, Jerome, Merrill, and of course, Jaylon Tyson. The 13th spot, I think, you can pencil in right now for Isaac Okoro, who, is up for an extension. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. If you are assuming that Okoro is back, that leaves 2 roster spots.
And Bates is on a multi-year two-way, correct?
I believe that's the case.
So we have two two-way spots as far as I'm aware, but I'm not sure on that.
Yeah, well, and there's always flexibility with those two ways as well if an opportunity were to come up. But I think if we're penciling in Okoro for now, that leaves two roster spots. I think one of those you would like to have for a big man, whether that's a 4 or 5, you want to have some depth there. But adding some wing depth would be nice, and that roster situation can certainly change if there's some sort of consolidation move where you're packaging some guys together to get a more proven wing. That could open up a roster spot. But I think there's a real opportunity for Luke Travers, and I think I'm at the opinion of, if he were coming over, I think I'd want him on a full-time deal. I think I'd want him with the Cavs rather than playing him in the G League, just because I think the level of competition in the NBL is higher. Like you're playing against grown men. There's a little bit more structure. If he's going to be playing, I'd like it to be there. Even if there's not a lot of minutes available for him on the Cavs, I would like to have the option of having him there, right? Like, hey, okay, we're winning this game comfortably. Let's get Luke some developmental minutes. Let's get him with a very strong developmental coach in Kenny Atkinson and see what can happen here. I think that would be the way that I would lean personally, but you seem more open to the possibility of a two-way.
Yeah, I don't really care how he gets on. I mean, those roster spots are precious, and we've seen this front office be pretty creative with how they structure even their full-time roster spots for guys that are more on the periphery of the league. So, I don't actually feel that strongly about one way or the other. I just think this is the summer league where Luke probably proves whether he belongs in Cavs fans' mental real estate. If another summer league comes and goes with solid plays and high IQ ball and not another deal, it's just eventually, again, how many summer leagues can you play?
Yeah, maybe that's kind of where I'm getting at here, where I'm like, if the answer is yes, say it with your chest, get him a full-time roster spot, because functionally, the two-way contract allows you to kind of explore the space a little bit, right? Like we saw that with Craig Porter Jr. of, hey, you're on a two-way, but opportunities are here. You're up with the big team. You get to play a lot, and you can earn kind of that full-time contract. So, from a cap standpoint, maybe there are some advantages that I'm not seeing. Maybe there's advantages to use a portion of the mid-level exception. And because all of a sudden we have all of this depth, and, opportunities to consolidate weren't really there on the trade market. Let's keep this kind of full roster. Let's get Travers on the two-way. And then if there's an opportunity early in the season to pull the trigger on a sort of deal and create roster spots, then we're able to do so. Or after, he's proven himself a little bit more, over here in North America, that we're able to give him that opportunity. So maybe I shouldn't, speak as strongly with it, but I think the spirit of what I'm trying to say is in line with you, which is, this is a very, very important year for him. And you just kind of like, it might not be true, but in my gut, it kind of feels like, if not now, it might not happen. And I'm just, because of what he's shown in the past in these kind of summer league experiences, and just like, he's someone that stands out as very clearly is just like a team basketball player. Like I think he's someone that excels in 5-on-5 probably more than he would in 1-on-1. And that's the type of connecting piece that this Cavs roster needs.
Absolutely, buddy. Should we talk a little free agency before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I'll mention one more thing. There's reporting that DJ Burns did receive a summer league invite. I haven't seen that confirmed by the team yet, but I certainly find that interesting. I saw the weight loss photos of him. If he is in fact on the summer league team, that's going to be interesting. I forget who made the comparison. I think it might be our buddy DH in the Discord to Udonis Haslem, that had some weight in college, lost it going to the pros, and just kind of found his way as a backup big. Just someone that has a lot of touch, a lot of feel, passing chops, and great footwork. Like
I'll say one thing
that'll be fun.
Yeah, one thing I always like with summer league invites are like actually unique, weird players. They get a chance to do some funky things. Yeah, like there's a lot of guys in the prospect market that are like really capable, good basketball players that are probably EuroLeague level basketball players that aren't quite NBA level, and You get out there and you watch him and you go, yeah, that's a basketball player, all right. Whereas like when you get to watch a weirdo play, it's like, ooh, what's going to happen when he's on the floor? And you kind of find out really fast, like, is this a good weird or is this a no shot weird?
Yeah, absolutely. And we got I saw a former Sea Bear, Darius Days, is getting his opportunity with the Sixers summer league team. So rooting for him. He didn't look particularly good for Winnipeg, so I'm a little skeptical. But we're rooting for him. It'll just be fun, man. I obviously, I hope Amani plays. I don't know if Craig will play for that one. It would be nice. Obviously, he doesn't have anything to prove now that he has an NBA deal, so probably won't happen. But just that was such a luxury with last year's team, being able to have kind of these proven guards and guys that are able to just run offense and have Sharif there.
It feels like we're gonna have, I mean, to me, like I wonder if this, if it's gonna be a pretty tough summer league team where you do have a bunch of guys, whether it's Isaiah, whether it's Pete Nance, whether it's Travers, whether it's a guy like Sharif Cooper, and guys where you go, like there's only probably so many spots here, like I think there's going to be a lot of folks in the mix for those two-way spots, and they might not even be on the summer league roster in the end, those are really fungible spots, and it'll be interesting to see who shows out the best and kind of earns their way onto the roster.
Yeah, it really will be interesting to track. The other thing that'll obviously be interesting to track is the Cavs' own kind of options here, right? I mentioned, the only free agent really is Isaac Okoro. We'll see if there's an extension agreed to there or how the Cavs manage that situation. But, there's obviously the possibility of a Donovan Mitchell extension, an Evan Mobley extension, the start of free agency. All of this is going to be coming together soon. And, from a podcast standpoint, if you've been hanging out with us the last couple of years, you'll know during the legal tampering period where, deals are announced but not official, we will be taking a hiatus. You will not be hearing from us on the podcast. But after July 6th, when things actually are real, we will be back. We will be breaking down what's going on for the Cavs. Carter, how are you feeling? How are you feeling about, extension season?
I'm feeling pretty confident. You read the reporting, you kind of see where the tea leaves are lying, and I just think I'm expecting, Donovan to be back. And normally when you offer, when you have a player like Mobley, you do everything you can to keep them. And the way the league is structured, it's really not that hard to get that first extension done if both sides are motivated to do so. So I'm expecting good news on that front, and then it gets hairy, because you have a guy like Okoro who has shown some really, really strong flashes. Especially, I thought his on-ball defense this year was the best it's ever been by a country mile. The shooting was better than it's ever been, and yet you still had yet another postseason where it's like, even when we're really banged up, Isaac's getting like 20 to 25 minutes. Even when we're down 4 rotation players, Isaac's only getting 20 minutes because they're not guarding him and he's not really making them pay. I thought, we talked about it a little bit on past pods. I was disappointed to see that not only did the jumper kind of abandon, he wasn't finishing well either in the postseason. So he's going to be in a weird spot from a value perspective. Obviously, restricted free agency. You look at the league trends, and teams do not often put in offers on restricted free agency role players. Yeah.
Look at PJ Washington last year, man.
Yep, and that's a player who the league clearly values. Yep. The Hornets got first rounders for him. So I think it really comes down to, if I'm the Cavs, brain trust, it's, do I want to keep Isaac on the roster long term? Does he still fit in our plans? Then it's, do I, with how close they are to that first luxury tax apron, it's, do I like Isaac more than options that I think, would be available at the mid-level? Or is there external interest where you could do a sign and trade or something like that? Which, gosh, with all these crazy CBA rules, I can barely tell what triggers what anymore. But whatever. Yeah. All I'm saying is, it's a pretty wide open playbook as far as I'm concerned. I don't really have strong expectations for Isaac, because the thing that's a little interesting is I'm a guy who is very much on team. Like, I really believe in running the core four back and not making any moves just to make them, just to say you made them, and making your team less talented in the process. But if you are going to do that, and then you run back every single role player, like, a team almost never runs back their top 9 in the rotation. Like, that is very, very, very uncommon. So it kind of comes down to, if you do bring Isaac back, how much can you meaningfully change the shape of your roster to better fit around the core that you have? And like, so I wish I had, I know this sounds a little wishy-washy, but I just don't think I have a very good answer, Justin, short of seeing the full tableau of moves that they can make elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't think it sounds wishy-washy. I think it sounds like an accurate assessment of how difficult the decision-making is going to be for, Kobe Altman, Mike Ganzi, and the front office, right? Like, I think they're going to need to analyze every option that's available to them and, really kind of sit down with the new CBA and see what's available, what options are there. Like, this is a really, really tricky thing. And I think anyone that acts like this is a straightforward process is, being a little short-sighted. And, from my standpoint, whether it comes to the core or the rotation players, I think anytime you have serious expectations, I think you need to evaluate every single aspect of, the core and the rotation and see what options are available to you. Like, I don't, it's as much as you get attached, and like, I think you and I certainly get attached to the guys that are here and are more interested in about making who you have available currently work and how to maximize that. Front offices have to be a little cold. They have to, examine every single option. And I think the one thing that continues to give me confidence is that historically, looking at this front office, is they've taken their time. They've really thought things through, right? They've made calculated risks. They haven't all panned out, but you can get the logic with each of these moves. And I'm interested to see how they approach this.
I have a question for you, which is, last year, this was a team that got their business done really early in the moratorium period. It was like day 2, free agency done forever for the Cavs. They get Jerome, they get LeVert, they get Niang, they get Strus. All those things just happened. Bang, 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 bang at the beginning of free agency. Does it feel to you like it's going to be the inverse on this one, where it could be a thing where we're a month into free agency and we don't feel like they're done with what their roster is going into next year?
I feel like the league's going to move quickly. Like, if it's a month or two later, I just don't think there's going to be opportunities out there. Like, whether it's trades, whether it's free agency, I just feel like teams are going to try to get their business done and just kind of settle down. So I guess my short answer is no. I think we're going to be able to kind of take the temperature of what's going on relatively quickly. But,
I kind of go the other way. I feel like with a restricted free agent situation, there's no-brainer use the full mid-level on this guy. Prospects and free agency,
honestly, it might just be a portion. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they just use a portion of the mid-level.
What I'm saying is, for the kind of guys the Cavs might be targeting in free agency, if using the mid-level, like, a lot of those guys are not $12-13 million a year players. At least historically, a lot of the guys that I think are fits for this team are kind of in that B and C tier of free agency. Mm-hmm. And I think those tend to go a little longer. So I actually think it's more likely that we're a weekend and we're going, are we going to do something? And that's just trying to read how weird restricted free agency is. But,
I get that.
Literally, we might hit the first day. We might hit Sunday at 5 o'clock and start seeing reports coming out about Cavs. We just don't know. I mean, I'm guessing here. This is the most conjecture that it could possibly be.
Yeah, and with the top ones, I think it's pretty straightforward. Donovan Mitchell, if you were healthy, you would have been an All-NBA player. That's a very easy pitch. Evan Mobley, you were the youngest finalist for Defensive Player of the Year, and if you would have stayed healthy all year, you probably would have been in that conversation again. You are awesome the way you are, and we feel really damn good about this. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's happening, and obviously we will be tapping back in as things become official and whatnot. So big thanks to everyone for your understanding, and for continuing to support us. We're
we
really
ain't
excited.
talking about it on Twitter either, by the way. So you're just not going to hear from us. Doesn't mean we don't like it or do like it. We're just going to, we got to go radio silent.
We'll be laying low. We'll be checking out what's going on, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens, man. Like I feel confident. I like what this team's doing. I like the hire Kenny Atkinson. I really like the selection of Jaylon Tyson. I think that gives them what they've something that they need, and something that you can't really add very often easily through free agency if he hits.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're probably going to wrap here pretty soon, but one thing I did want to say is I continue to be encouraged as myself as an individual Cavs fan that so many things that the front office continues to do generally aligns with my value system. Like the things you hear the front office talk about, in the postseason availability and moving on from JB in terms of. And like the things they're saying in that press conference, the things that they're saying in the immediate aftermath of drafting Tyson, the fact that they chose a guy like Tyson, like they seem to be messaging a lot of the things that I want to see them message as a fan. And like, your mileage may vary on that. I have perfectly smart friends who are hearing the same things I'm hearing and go, I don't like that direction at all. So your mileage may vary, but as this Cavs fan is happy that my value system seems to be aligned really well with this front office's value system.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, I think there's a lot of room, to disagree, to discuss and all that. I think basketball is one of the most subjective games to discuss because so much of it comes down to chemistry, right? It's about finding the right mix. It's about maximizing the talent that's available to you, making compromises left, right, and center, right? Like that's my favorite thing when it comes to the draft is why did you draft this player that actually exists? Why didn't you draft the hypothetical archetype that doesn't fit any single player that was on the board? Like that is so often the conversation. And I have a lot of fun, living in reality and discussing what's available and how to kind of make this stuff work. And, off season, I think is one of my favorite times to discuss the team, just because so much of it kind of ties into philosophy, and then it just continues to build that hunger for the games to return, and I just can't wait to see what next season looks like. So big thanks to everyone that tuned in live on YouTube. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, click the notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of our Discord or the Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of the review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.